Um, Obviously, at this time, it's hard to speak on what the consequences will be, but
Dustin Johnson just flipped the golf world upside down. What many assumed was the beginning of his decline has erupted into a fierce 2025 LIV comeback that no one can ignore. And today I'm breaking down every swing, every rumor, and why the entire golf universe is suddenly locked onto him. The season opened with that eerie calm that always signals incoming drama, and as Johnson stepped onto the sun-scorched fairways in Riyadh, he carried the weight of a narrative fans thought was already written: decline, slump, and slow fade. But with every shot, he shredded that storyline like a flimsy prop in a bargain bin golf soap opera. His rounds 68, 70, 69 looked modest on paper, but pulsed with the energy of a man refusing to step aside. The doubts that followed him through 2024 evaporated instantly, replaced by a dangerous whisper across the sport: he still has it.
really had to think long and hard about, and ultimately I decided to come do this and play out here, and like I said, I'm excited about it, and obviously the Ryder Cup is unbelievable, and it's something that's definitely meant a lot to me, and proud to say that I've played and represented my country, and hopefully I'll get a chance to do that again, but I don't make the rules.
Observers watched Dustin Johnson unleash 312-yard rockets from the tee drives that didn't just fly, but announced his dominance, while his imperfect 58% fairway accuracy became less a flaw and more a compelling subplot to the chaos. His iron play was scorching, gaining over half a stroke on approach each round, as if he'd rediscovered a secret the rest of the field had forgotten. From Riyadh's furnace heat to Hong Kong's tropical humidity, his season mutated into a full-blown resurgence, punctuated by a blistering 64 that detonated social feeds, and a 402-yard bomb that made the ball look like it needed therapy. By the time the tour reached Miami, it was obvious he wasn't reviving a career, he was rebooting it with vengeance. The putter woke up, his confidence sharpened into something almost predatory, and fans no longer saw a 41-year-old veteran. They saw a storm tightening. Week after week, he pushed deeper into a revenge-fueled renaissance, culminating in a bogey-free 64 in Andalusia that rocketed him up the leaderboard and felt less like nostalgia and more like a king returning to reclaim his throne.
I chose what's best for me and my family.
The numbers reinforced the spectacle in ways that made skeptics squirm. Total strokes gained climbed steadily, a quiet yet merciless reminder that Dustin Johnson's game still had teeth sharp, polished, and unsettlingly familiar. Every drive, every iron, every approach seemed to carry the weight of a man rediscovering secrets the rest of the field had long forgotten. Ball striking was up, efficient, precise, and electric, leaving commentators stumbling over their words as they tried to explain how. At 41, Johnson was routinely outplaying athletes half his age, men trained like Silicon Valley-engineered cyborgs, yet failing to match the rhythm, the poise, the sheer raw force of a veteran in his prime renaissance. Yet, as with any great sports comeback, shadows lurked in the margins. A T23 finish in Singapore hinted that inconsistency had not entirely vanished. A missed team playoff in Chicago reminded fans that perfection remained elusive, and early mid-pack finishes were like small tremors before an earthquake. But those hiccups weren't failures, they were seasoning, adding texture and unpredictability to an already intoxicating narrative. Every brilliant round that followed bogey-free masterpieces, explosive top 5 showings felt almost feral, a predator testing the waters, reminding the world why he had once dominated leaderboards with such effortless authority. Off the course, his life seemed almost cinematic, juggling global travel, fatherhood, media attention, and public scrutiny with a casual mastery, carrying golf bags one day, wrangling sons Tatum and River the next, while whispers of behind-the-scenes contracts, rumored PGA overtures, and alleged negotiations swirled just out of reach, carefully timed to stoke conversation and speculation. Johnson brushed it all aside with a steely calm, letting the world wonder while he focused solely on each next swing, each next round, and each next leaderboard conquest. By midsummer, the arc had transformed from a feel-good comeback into a full-blown athletic thriller. Rounds of lightning precision in Hong Kong, Miami near-misses that left fans gasping, and bogey-free brilliance in Valorama that forced broadcasters to invent new adjectives. Each performance wasn't just a score, it was a statement, a declaration that whatever slump had haunted him only sharpened his teeth, honed his focus, and strengthened his resolve. At the center of this storm was the Four Aces GC team he led with quiet, commanding authority, turning individual brilliance into collective dominance. Fans weren't passive observers. They were hooked, refreshing leaderboards like addicts, craving the next leap, the next statistical anomaly, the next shot that defied age and expectation. Amid it all, Johnson remained unreadable, letting the rumor mills, the analysts, and the social media speculation swirl around him. Perfectly aware that ambiguity itself was a weapon, feeding the drama and heightening every moment of suspense. By the time the tour turned toward its full finale, the saga had become something much larger than golf. It was about legacy, reinvention, loyalty, unfinished business, and a relentless drive to rewrite perception. Then came the explosive announcement that would reverberate across the sport. Johnson re-signed with LIV Golf. One signature, one quiet move behind closed doors, obliterated a year of speculation, tweets, studio debates, and wishful thinking. It wasn't just a contract. It was a declaration of allegiance, a reshaping of his identity, and a reminder that, in a sport where loyalty had become rarer than fairways in a hurricane, Dustin Johnson remained untouchable, untamed, and unapologetically in command.
Now, the reason this is so significant is because DJ was part of the first wave of players who made the move to LIV Golf in 2022. There appears to be no deal imminent within the PGA Tour and LIV, and there's no pathway back to the PGA Tour, so just makes sense for DJ to re-sign and just keep cashing that check. Now, I think DJ can have a late run into his mid-40s like we've seen from Justin Rose, contending in majors, but he just hasn't been the same player since going to LIV Golf, but it's still significant because he's re-signing.
The deal was reportedly worth between $50 and $75 million, a sum that depended not just on leaderboards conquered, but trophies hoisted, a contract tied to performance and legacy. It wasn't the explosive bonanza of his 2022 signing, but it carried meaning deeper than dollars. Johnson wasn't merely testing the waters of disruption, anymore he was swimming laps in them. The timing was poetic. Riding the high of a scorching late-season push, his third-place finish in Indianapolis still echoing across golf channels, he signed the dotted line. He had clawed his game back to life, and instead of leveraging that momentum to retreat into golf's traditional safe havens, he doubled down on the wild frontier of LIV Golf. Critics bristled. Traditionalists claimed he'd exiled himself from real golf, dismissing LIV's global schedule as a traveling circus of mediocrity. Johnson's response was characteristically deadpan, a masterclass in subtle defiance. 3 individual LIV titles already, a record that spoke louder than words respect the receipts. Yet this wasn't just about money or ego. Off the course, Johnson's life had evolved alongside his career. 6 driver changes in 1 year, philanthropic ventures, a family-centered orbit filled with vacations, junior golf lessons, and Paulina's Instagram feed offering curated glimpses of domestic harmony. That off-course glow made his on-course aggression feel even sharper, a polished mirror hiding a blade. LIV CEO Scott O'Neill called him a cornerstone, a foundational figure for the league's next chapter, global expansion, media deals, and surging sponsorships. Amid swirling uncertainty, merger rumors, and fractured tours, Johnson's commitment served as a stabilizing beam. His choice was neither retreat nor hedge, it was a calculated, quiet, defiant bet, and as the ink dried, the golf world trembled. Yet no contract, no matter how ironclad, could silence the rumor mills that buzzed endlessly around him. Whispers of a potential PGA return had been simmering all year, fueled by desperation, nostalgia, and logistical chaos. Every time a homecoming possibility surfaced, Johnson's name was always the first to be thrown into the mix, a constant spark in the swirling storm of speculation.
Breaking news, Dustin Johnson apparently re-signs with LIV Golf. Now, as reported by Flushing at Golf, multiple sources confirm that Dustin Johnson has signed a new contract with LIV Golf. The details of the deal are unknown at this stage. Now, Flushing at Tom is extremely plugged into LIV Golf, so when he reports something like this, I generally take it at face value. Now, it would make sense. DJ just played on the International Series on the Asian Tour this week, and as we know, the Asian Tour has had a heavy investment from LIV Golf. Now, a respectable T15 from DJ this week at 13 under. Tough look for the crowd who thinks he's washed.
The script was always the same. Johnson misses a major cut, rumors spike. He speaks vaguely in a press conference, and Twitter collectively loses its mind. Johnson so much as breathes near a PGA official, and the pundits erupt, analyzing him like a political candidate on the verge of switching parties, rather than a golfer lining up a par for approach. The speculation took on a life of its own, absurd, obsessive, almost comedic. Podcast hosts swore they had sources. Rory McIlroy urged reconciliation, preaching unity, while Greg Norman puffed out his chest, preaching innovation like scripture. Meanwhile, Johnson continued to stumble at Major's 3 missed cuts in 2025 alone, but his LIV performances were sharp, lucrative, and trending upward, the success drowned out by the fanfare people craved. The soap opera arc, the teary press conference, the dramatic return to Ponte Vedra. That would never happen. And when the resigning announcement finally dropped, the rumor storm hit an impenetrable wall. Every hypothetical, every fantasy tweet evaporated. Johnson had chosen his battlefield, and it wasn't the one traditionalists wanted. Even so, the whispers didn't die, they mutated. Maybe he'd return in 2027. Maybe LIV and PGA would merge. Maybe he'd appear at a Ryder Cup via some loophole concocted by desperate executives. Johnson's stance never wavered. He was committed to LIV, focused on competing, amused or oblivious to the hysteria swirling around him. In a sport obsessed with legacy, tradition, and reputation, Dustin Johnson embracing golf's rebellious edge created an irresistible contradiction. He wasn't chasing a safe ending, fanfiction, or nostalgia. He was building something slower, stranger, and far more compelling, a future that didn't need the PGA's approval at all. By the time the final 2025 events rolled around, Johnson's arc had grown bigger than scorecards or stats. He had become a symbol of golf's seismic identity crisis, a figure caught between eras, mythologies, and competing futures. And through it all, he remained calm, treating the cacophony around him like background noise, the kind you forget until someone finally switches the volume off.
But regards to majors, are you?
Majors, I mean, it's, again, I can't answer for the majors, but, you know, hopefully they're going to allow us to play. Obviously, I'm exempt for the majors, so I plan on playing there unless I hear otherwise.
Yeah, from my point of view.
He spoke openly about wanting 6 more years of competition, insisting the fire still burned bright, a declaration that sounded less like a cliche and more like a warning. He wanted more wins, more team dominance, more global events in corners of the world traditional tours had long overlooked, and he had the platform to chase them. LIV's expansion into new countries, its ballooning sponsorship roster, and flirtations with global broadcast deals had turned the league into something impossible to ignore, and Johnson positioned himself at the heart of that evolution, quietly, without grandstanding. Younger players studied him. Teammates leaned on him. Fans recognized his silhouette from miles away. His presence alone added gravitas to every fairway he walked, from Riyadh to Valderrama to rumored venues in the Philippines. And yet, his legacy remained a tug-of-war. Traditionalists clung to his PGA past. The 2020 Masters, the 2016 US Open, years of domination that cemented him among the greats. LIV loyalists embraced his present. The disruptive victories, the leadership, the willingness to challenge a system that dictated who mattered and why. Johnson didn't publicly choose sides because he didn't need to. His career had become a hybrid, part legend, part renegade, part architect of golf's strange new horizon. Snubs from the majors still stung, yet he treated them as obstacles, not indictments, performing brilliantly at events like Dunhill Links, proving he could compete anywhere, anytime. As for the future, he hinted at more wins, more battles, and even the faint, whispered possibility of Ryder Cup involvement should the sport ever unify. His legacy wasn't shrinking, it was mutating, growing stranger, bolder, louder. And as the season's final sunset fell over another LIV venue, it became clear, Dustin Johnson wasn't writing a comeback story. He was writing a new genre, reshaping the gravitational pull of professional golf. Loyalty, resurgence, turbulence. Fire. His 2025 season had become a saga no one saw coming. One thing was certain. Whatever came next, the fairways would never be quiet again.